Hello and welcome to This Week in the Middle East with myself, Francis Matthew, and my friend Eddie O'Sullivan. And this week we're joined by George Kanaan, very distinguished banker who had a long career in international banking. And more recently, more immediately, he's been for 15 years, the Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of the Arab Bankers Association in London. So let me bring in Eddie. Eddie, hello.
Hello, Francis.
And George, welcome to the show.
Hi, Francis. Pleasure to be here.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for making the time. I gather you're in Lebanon right now.
Yes, I am.
Excellent.
Right above Jounieh. In the
Jounieh.
hills above Jounieh, yeah.
Oh, well, you're warmer than we are.
Most certainly. Most certainly. In more ways than you think.
And how does it feel in Lebanon now? Is it as tense as we understand it from abroad?
Not at all. Everyday life is very normal. The restaurants, for example, I just came from an iftar invitation, absolutely packed. The streets are very busy. There is a certain amount of investment going into the country. You hear of new plants being built. You see building sites come up, open up in the ground. And everybody talks about the war, but nobody seems to think that it will affect us or affect them.
But I've heard that it's sort of on edge and everybody's jumpy and the lira is crashing and people are struggling.
The lira has held steady against the dollar since the new governor took place at the central, Wasim Mansouri at the central bank. He took over from. He's the deputy governor who is now acting governor of the central bank. Since he took office, and I think slightly for a little while before him, the lira had been steady at about 90,000 to the US dollar. And there seems to be no threat to it. The country is fully dollarized. You buy and sell everything here in dollars, in cash for the most part, or in transfers across your foreign accounts if both parties got them. The banks have a facility called fresh dollar accounts, so people can use them to import and export and do whatever else they need to do. I understand the total amount now, the total balances in these accounts are some people tell me it's as much as 3 billion. Some people think that in the summer they went on to really quite dramatic amounts, maybe 10, 11 billion dollars. The commercial activity is very good. The export activity is excellent. They're exporting agricultural products all over the place and also manufactured products. The country seems to be in an interesting mood.
This is despite the political stasis. The politics is stuck.
Absolutely. This is despite the fact it's no more than a political crisis. It's the fact that the state is hardly operating. The state apparatus is hardly operating in the country. It's there. There are empty spots and there's vacuum in certain parts of it, but it actually, if you want to buy a piece of land, you do it. It'll take you time to register it, the real estate registry, and get your deed if you are lucky to get your deed. The government's collecting taxes, so that apparatus still seems to work. The security apparatus is in good shape. The army and the security forces are in control. You don't hear much crime in the country. There's, of course, the situation with the Syrian refugees, which is a bit of an interesting
Who are
story. to say.
mainly on the east in the Bekaa Valley and other areas there?
They seem to be everywhere because effectively, this is an economy that relies on Syrian labor. You take Syrian labor out of this country, and it basically grinds to a halt. There would be no construction workers. There'd be hardly any agricultural workers. The cleaning people, the people who run, who collect your rubbish, etc. If the Syrians leave Lebanon, they would all stop.
But what happened? What happened to the Lebanese workers? Where have they gone?
Well, I don't know. Many Lebanese don't seem to want to have. There are many jobs Lebanese don't want to do. A lot of the Lebanese craftsmen and let's say carpenters, for example, seem to have emigrated. Many of them have gone to the Gulf. The demand for Lebanese labor in the Gulf states in Saudi Arabia is very high.
Yes.
You have to see the Lebanese restaurants who are opening at a rapid clip in Lebanon, but they're opening at a far faster clip in Dubai and Saudi Arabia. And they import their chefs. I mean, I have a son who's got a bakery here, a Western style bakery. And every time they train a baker, they lose him. They lose him to the
Right.
so now they've got the chief baker now, and the baker, which is really quite a splendid operation, is in fact Syrian. So this whole thing about the Syrian refugees in Lebanon, I mean, yes, there are people living in tents and in very, sort of refugee type status. Tents, gathering lots of people, not good sanitation, not good whatever. United Nations auspices, etc. Yes, there's a problem there. The real numbers, I don't know. I mean, the Lebanese government tells you there's 2 million refugees in Lebanon. I don't see it in Lebanon. I don't see them. Where are they?
Well, I mean, the Lebanese civil war is going on for more than 13, 14 years now, and it may have been calmer in the last year or two. So people may start going back
to Syria. Yes, I know. Certainly, some families are going back. Some families use the Libyan route to go to Europe. Some families are now using the shorter route to go to Cyprus. The demand, believe it or not, the supply of seats on vessels from the ports of Tripoli and other ports in the North of Lebanon to Cyprus is not matching supply. So the price of a seat on a boat for an illegal immigrant has declined over the last few weeks from $7,000 to $3,000. There's not enough Syrians want to leave now.
Fascinating hearing. Surprisingly, to be honest, I didn't understand that Lebanon was sort of so much on its feet. Eddie, you come in.
Yeah, I mean, George, if you were talking to an international investor, an institutional investor, I mean, is Lebanon a saleable prospect? Could you sell that to an institutional investor in London or New York or Paris?
Absolutely not. There is no stake to speak of. How would you? How could you run your operation here very efficiently? However, you are talking about a country now that has had the IMF treatment in a way that no country's ever had it. So the Lebanese consumer sector has no debt because there are no credit cards around outstanding, and there are no mortgages outstanding. The corporate sector, which had about $35 billion worth of debt, has paid off its debt with much devalued Lebanese dollars of the old in the old bank accounts. So the Lebanese corporate sector has absolutely no debt. The government can't borrow a penny, so they have to spend the money they collect and no more. The central bank, the new governor, is not willing to lend the government a penny to pay anything, including salaries if they have to. If they need to, they can't go to him. So they have to spend the money they raise from taxes and fees, etc. And they're collecting those efficiently, so they are able to operate. So this is a country that is operates wholly on equity. Would you rather be here, or would you rather have $34 trillion in debt? And that's not only counting the federal government debt.
Well, that's an interesting.
And a twin deficit's up to 8% of the GDP. I mean, I think you would want an international investor should be buying property in Beirut. I don't know.
So, what about the banking system, George? Does anybody?
It's not there. It's not there.
So nobody puts money. I mean, if you're a saver or an investor, you don't put money in the bank at all. You just keep it.
You'd be testing. You would not be doing yourself a favor if you think of Lebanese banks as a place to put your money in. However, you have to use banking systems. You have to import money, and you have to maybe put some money to operate in Lebanon as operating funds in your account. The banks tell you that the fresh money accounts are held only at their correspondent banks in the US or Europe. So those funds are segregated fully and placed in those accounts. Now that gives you, now it's been a year in operation, a bit more than that, maybe 2 years. And there has been no sign of any trouble in there. You see, I tell my bank to send me, let's say, 3,000-4,000 quid from London to spend in Beirut. They arrive here. I rush like everybody else to the bank to pick it up because I don't like keeping money in the Lebanese bank. Who knows what happens, and therefore you rush to it and you put up the equivalent in cash. You spend it, and you keep it at home in the meantime. So the Lebanese banks are really now in people's homes. People put their money at home, and Lebanon is a large importer of. In the last statistics, World Bank statistics, the second highest import of Lebanon is gold. So I think probably the Lebanese buy gold to keep at home, along with the dollars. What other thing would they do? You see, most Lebanese have a difficult time opening a bank account overseas now, unless you already have a nationality and from Lebanon. If you as Lebanese say, "I want to open up a bank account," the first thing you do is you have to bring him cash. Nobody's going to take that. And there are lots of doubts about, is how much money laundering is going on in Lebanon right now. So the system is fully cash, fully greenbacks. All of Lebanon operates on is greenbacks. I don't know how in fact would money laundering work in this kind of atmosphere, because to launder money, it means you want to make it legitimate, right? And the legitimate means put it in a bank account somewhere, but you can't do that here. Yeah. So I think probably there is no money laundering going on. Yeah.
So just in terms of life for the ordinary citizen, I mean, I wouldn't classify you as being an ordinary Lebanese citizen, George. You're not a typical.
Of course not.
So what about the ordinary middle class or lower middle class or working class Lebanese? I mean, is it tough, very tough, impossible? How would you describe it for them?
It was, they went through a very difficult time from the time when the street troubles started. I wouldn't call them a revolution, but the troubles started, and which led to the banking crisis when the banks closed down. Let's say 2019. Since 2019, they went through a difficult period, including COVID, which hit Lebanon, but was well managed by the government of Professor Diab. And of course, then they were hit by the explosion at the airport, at the port. I'm sorry, apologies. The port explosion also created a great deal of misery, and of course, the currency in the meantime was collapsing, sometimes at a slow rate, sometimes a fast rate, but collapsing nevertheless. I think now most people are feeling better. At Christmas, we attempted to distribute. My wife runs a women's committee, and she attempted to distribute some food to the needy in the town, and she didn't find any. Yeah. So Yeah, the Lebanese diaspora is large. It's everywhere.
Yes.
It's in all the producing countries. If the oil price goes up, the Lebanese economic situation improves automatically. The Lebanese live off their business and activities and their employment activities in the Gulf, in Saudi Arabia, in Nigeria, and various other West African countries, and Latin America. The price of commodities generally, but the price of oil specifically, contributes to their well-being. And once they're feeling good, those people send money back home. They do things. Their mother wants to improve the house. They'll send the money to do that. They'll make sure that they don't need anything, anybody. The health sector in Lebanon, which suffered greatly during as a result of the port explosion, is now fully recovered. You step into hospitals in Beirut and you'll be amazed at the quality of medical care you have available here. And people seem to have access to it. Don't ask me how. I don't know. I'm covered by BUPA. So I have no issues. But I walk in, they love me because I'm covered by BUPA. BUPA is a great name in the insurance business in Lebanon. But people don't seem to have a problem. There are lots of government hospitals that are well managed, well run. How do people get support for when they get sick? It helps that the cost of care, medical care in Lebanon, are very reasonable. Completely out of whack with the quality. The quality is so high. The quality is literally Western quality. Yeah, UK, US quality. And the price is something like third world, like Egypt, whatever.
Extraordinary. How would you, just on the political risk, I mean, when you talk to someone, how would you summarize, because there you are, Lebanon. I mean, obviously Lebanon, the southern part of Lebanon seems to be a different world to Beirut, and Beirut's a little bit different from other parts of Lebanon. But overall, how would you describe to an investor? I mean, you wouldn't advise them to invest, as you just said.
No, I wouldn't. I can't. I can't disagree with you. If somebody comes and tells me I want to invest a large amount of money in Lebanon, I'll tell them not to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But how would you describe the political risk? The 5-year outlook, political risk for Lebanon. The possibility of something bad happening is pretty high, isn't it, George?
No. The schisms are there without any doubt. They are deep, and in some cases there are new points, borders of separation, points of separation between the various communities. However, I do not believe any party in Lebanon wants to have a war similar to what they went through from 75 to 90. I don't. There has been. It would have happened if it was to happen. There was many chances of it happening over the past 20 years.
Yes.
It didn't happen. It is really strange. I think the Lebanese do not want to fight. They just don't want to fight each other.
No.
And
George,
on the other hand, they don't seem to want to agree and arrive at a settlement, at an arrangement, but they don't want to fight.
But looking to the south, in the south, you've got Hezbollah looking over to Israel, and they are following a slightly different course. So do you foresee any issues there?
No, because Hezbollah's course of action is very finely calibrated. It seems to me so they do the minimum given their ideology, limited by the feeling of the rest of the Lebanese. I mean, the rest of the Lebanese say to Hezbollah, look, if Mahmoud Abbas doesn't support Hamas, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, isn't that a legitimate question to ask?
Yes.
Okay, we don't like the Israelis. We don't like what they're doing in Gaza. We wish they lose. But why should we, if the Palestinian brothers, the West Bank, don't want to fight, why should we? And of course, when you add the rest of the Arab world, I mean, nobody allows even as much as a demonstration around the Arab world in support of them. So why do you? So they ask the legitimate question. They do ask a legitimate question, which is what's keeping the lid on the war. My feeling about the war is that Hezbollah does not want to expand it at all. There are a lot of stories from the south about the Israelis bombing empty fields, and Hezbollah bombing also a lot of empty fields.
Really?
How true, I don't know, but I've heard it.
Exactly. So anyway, we're obviously gripped by this tale, George. It's fantastic to hear from you. But let's look an area that you spend a lot of time working in. The outlook, do you feel, for Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, it looks pretty positive despite everything, isn't it, George?
It certainly is. The feeling you get from the Emirates, the only area which seems to be slow is Qatar. This is a reaction to the euphoria of the World Cup. It slowed down quite considerably, and it feels relatively inactive, the country and the economy, and in all respects. But the rest is moving and moving very well. The Saudi Arabia is doing very, very well. So is the Emirates. So is Kuwait.
And what about Egypt, George? You spent much time in Egypt. What is your prognostication about the Egypt economy and its medium-term prospects the next 5 years?
Well, we were all very worried until the Emiratis did this, announced this enormous investment. They made the down payment on this enormous investment on the Mediterranean coastline, buying a piece of land, a huge piece of land. Big land, so they can put on it another Dubai of the North, I guess, and that is that sorted out the financial situation, kept a lid on the problem with the pound, and changed the atmosphere. But Egypt, as you know, is a problematic economy. I think it's no secret that the main source of the problem is the role that the army is playing in the economy, crowding out the private sector, not doing a very efficient job at what they're doing, in terms of running the economy, and of course there is a perennial problem of corruption, which seems to be huge and not yielding. However, people who traveled recently, I haven't been in Egypt now for about 6 months. The people who have been recently there have enjoyed it. They have gone up and down the Nile. It's been a great trip. They have bought stuff. Everything seems to be very cheap. So there's a whole bunch of Lebanese flooding the Egyptian tourist locations. Would they be followed by others? I don't know. I mean, the Lebanese don't seem to worry about the political situation here as much as the European would or should worry, in fact.
Yes, and just the other question, the big question, this $64,000 question, is your personal view, and obviously it's a sensitive matter, but your personal view about how you think the situation, which is now focused on Gaza and Israel, how you feel that's going to go over the next year or so.
My feeling is that the only party that needs to continue fighting, that needs a war, an expanded war if possible, is Netanyahu and his government. They are, my feeling about Israel is that it's not a normal state. It's a garrison state with borders always in flux and in conflict. It's not Denmark, for example, right? A garrison state needs an army that induces fear in its enemies, external, internal, otherwise. That mythology, piece of mythology, vanished on the 7th of October. It's been further eroded. Well, it's not vanished, it was damaged. It was further eroded by the action that took place in Gaza. 6 months of fighting in a small area of 350 square kilometers, with none of its objectives even remotely close to being achieved. They need a victory. They need a clear victory to replenish the image of might, the image of we are a powerful army, we are an incredibly efficient intelligence service, we know everything, we can go and help and offer our protection all over Africa and the Arab world, here and there. They can't do this anymore. They need a victory, and a victory is going to come. I don't know where. They think perhaps they can have such a victory over Hezbollah. Oh, if they haven't done so well against Hamas, how are you going to cope with Hezbollah?
Yeah.
I know it's a ridiculous thing. So someone's got to do something. You know what the Israelis now need? The same treatment that the Lebanese need. They need a truly great power to come out from outside and really wring their necks and put them together in Lebanon and force them to do some decent peace arrangement in Israel. But where is that great power? Once upon a time, there was something called the British Empire. Where is it?
And do you see any in that world? Do you see any of the Gulf role taking a stronger look? The Saudis are taking a lead, beginning to offer political leadership.
I haven't seen it yet.
No.
In fact, you know, when you think of the actions of Saudi Arabia over the past year or two, they seem to want to calm down the area around them and really focus on their internal development, which is what they should do. And focusing on internal development and really precludes working on regional or international issues. I think they have. I don't see them playing a role as Saudis, much as people want them to. For example, in Lebanon, we want them to play politically, we want them to play a role here. They don't seem to be all that active. I don't know. I'm not a politician in Lebanon, so I don't know. But I watch and I say to myself, they are focused internally. They want to develop the country. They want to develop the economy, and we don't want to war with Yemen. We don't want to fight.
Well, they have some quite huge internal projects afoot, as it were, the Vision 2030 and other ones.
Huge.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't think it's high on the list what happens. They want to stay out of all these problems. That's what if you want to summarize in one sentence, keep us out. We'll say all the right things, we'll do all the right things, but keep us out.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think, Eddie, I think we pause at this stage.
Well, that's great, George. It's wonderful. Your insights are extremely valuable, and you bring to bear such an extensive experience. I mean, I think it's invaluable. So, George, thank you so much for sharing your view.
Thank you, George. And thank you for offering me a new and fresher look at what's happening in Lebanon. So we'll pause and say thank you very much. So there we have a chance to reflect on what's happening in that country and in Lebanon, and a far more cheerful outlook than I expected. And so with that, I wish you well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.